battle between Ichibe and Yuha continues yet again, and this battle continues on even further in a couple of chapters. But I will say, this battle, I'm really enjoying it so far, and Ichibe has to be probably my favorite character so far out of Squad Zero. But I do have one problem. He wasn't fighting at full strength because he didn't want to tarnish the reputation of the Quincy's. Yuha and the Stern Reachers just invaded the Soul King's palace, trying to get to the Soul King. They're at a freaking war. I think tarnishing the reputation of the Quincy's should be the least of Ichibe's worries at this point. Well, anyway, in this chapter, we get to see more of Ichibe's abilities and Yuha's abilities. With Yuha, it's no surprise that he can restore his power back to himself. I mean, we saw him giving himself back his voice in the previous chapters. But he can also use the Blood Vein to create a protective barrier called the Blood Vein on Haben. Blood Vein on Haben can also erode everything that comes in contact with Yuha's body and uses it to expand its coverage. Now, I can assume that Yuha's the only person that can use Blood Vein like this, considering that we haven't seen a single Stern Reacher use freaking Blood Vein ever since Kerjaopi. I mean, I cannot recall for the life of me any of the other Stern Reachers using Blood Vein. Or maybe some did and I missed it, I don't know. Anyway, with Ichibe's abilities, he can use Urahado or Hidden Hado techniques. Maybe this Hidden Hado is also why he was able to summon giant hands and feet. But previously he used a technique called the Hyapo Rankan, the 100-step banister, but it didn't really do anything because it gets blocked by the Blood Vein on Haben. Well, we do see a Hidden Hado technique called the Sanno Do, the third path, Teppu Utsatsu, Iron Wind Strike, where he karate chops the barrier, destroying it by summoning a giant dragon head that blows the barrier. At least I think that's what it's doing, I really have no idea. But this chapter also shows Ichibe's badassery when the Blood Vein on Haben was about to erode the left part of his body when he was trying to choke Yuha, but he flexes his muscles, pushing back the Blood Vein back to Yuha and injure him pretty badly. That is freaking badass! In fact, I think Ichibe is probably one of the first people to injure Yuha this badly. But after that, we get the reveal of Ichibe's Shikai, painted black Ichimonji. And honestly, it looks Basically, his Shikai is just the brush being replaced by a blade on his paintbrush. That's basically it. But even if Ichimonji seems lackluster in appearance, it does show that it has an interesting ability. Since we all know Ichibe was the one that named everything in Soul Society, the reveal of the Shikai's ability, Ichimonji, shows more of his naming ability used in battle. What Ichimonji does is remove the names on anything that is covered with its ink, and those that lose their names also lose their powers as well. Since Yuha had his sword and Quincy Cross covered with ink, those items lose their power. It is an interesting Shikai ability, and it's suitable for Ichibe considering that he was the one that gave names to everything in Soul Society, so it suits him. But what I wasn't expecting is the source of his power. In the chapter, Yuha tries to steal his power for his own by using the Zank Altar or Holy Altar, which he did successfully steal his power, but he couldn't really make it his own because Ichibe's power is black. Whenever he releases Ichimonji, all of the color black, not only in the Soul King's palace, but also in the entire Seriete, becomes his own power. And yet, even though Ichibe's powers are pretty crazy, he's obviously going to be defeated by Yuha because, you know, he's the main final villain. Not to mention, in the last page, Yuha gets drenched in black. He's obviously going to lose his name, but it's possible that he can restore his name just like how he was able to restore his voice. Well, if Yuha does want to turn the tables in the battle, I can assume that he has to pull something that's even crazier than Ichimonji. Well, what do you know, Yuha does pull off something crazier than Ichimonji, and this is the same chapter we get to see Ichibe's Bankai as well. But before we get to Yuha, let's get back to Ichibe. Yes, he does release his Bankai in this chapter, which is called Shinuchi Shirafude Ichimonji. His Bankai is now a white paintbrush that uses white instead of black. It has the ability to give a new name to everything that has been blackened out by Ichimonji, and those that are given the new name also gain the strength and the abilities that go with the name. Since Yuha lost his name when he was drenched in black by Ichimonji, Ichibei gave him the name Kuro Ari, which means black ant. This also means that Yuha now has the power of a black ant. Now, going off on a tangent here, Ichibei said that Bankais were once known as evolved Zanpakuto, which was kind of strange because he was the one that named everything in Soul Society, including Shikais and Bankais. So he was the one that gave the term evolved Zanpakuto instead of Bankai? If that's the case, then who was the one that changed the evolved Zanpakutos into the term Bankai? Anyway, even though Ichibei is this powerful, it was inevitable that Yuha will turn things around, especially after getting stomped on by a giant foot and squished by 2 giant hands. While falling, something happens to his eye, like his eye was either spinning very fast or he gained a second pupil. Yuha managed to get back up to the platform, stab something at Ichibei, and removes the Kuro Ari name that Ichibei gave him, as well as the black ink that he was drenched on. How was he able to do this? Well, it's because of the power of Yuha's letter, which we all know is the letter A, but we finally learn what it stands for, the Almighty. Yuha's power is explained by Haschwald, who is standing there doing nothing. I'm assuming he's talking to Uryu, because who else would he be talking to? Anyway, according to Haschwald, Yuha's power allows him to understand all that he sees from any given perspective. And as long as he understands everything that he sees, whatever he sees can't defeat him. Now yes, this ability is really hacks. Probably more hacks than Aizen, but there are ways for Yuha to be defeated. As long as Yuha understands all that he sees, whatever he sees can't be defeated. So what Ichigo might have to do is attack Yuha where he can't see him, or blind Yuha, and then Ichigo should go for the kill. Maybe not use all of his abilities and use only those that Yuha can't understand. But then again, if the fight goes on for very long, then Yuha will gain an understanding of how the abilities would work. So if there's any chance for Ichigo to defeat him, it has to be very, very quick. It's a pretty decent chapter overall, but since Yuha has activated his true power, and if we assume this is going to end up like the Yamamoto fight, yeah, Ichibei is so dead. You know what, after reading this chapter, I don't know if any of my theories might actually come true. Ichigo might have to pull off some bullshit if he were to defeat Yuha, because in this chapter, Haschwald explains to Uryu even more on Yuha's ability, and, well, let's just say Yuha is a freaking god. It's bad enough that he's more hacks than Aizen. No, he is a freaking god. Remember that myth about the Quincy King way back? 900 years to regain his pulse, 90 years to regain his intellect, and 9 years to regain his power? Well, guess what? Coincidentally, the 9 years have been completed, and Yuha has finally obtained his full power. Yeah, ever since he was introduced to right at this moment, Yuha was never fighting at full strength because he never regained his true power. Honestly, I find this way too convenient that the 9 years have been completed at the exact moment where he was about to be defeated by Ichibei. Anyway, within those 9 years of power, Yuha had to keep his eyes closed, because if he were to open them within the 9 years, then he would lose control over his power and steal all the Stern Reacher's abilities. Now this is the part where I start to get doubtful over my theories. Yuha's eyes can see into the future. That's right, people, Yuha has eye powers. And honestly, Yuha looks kind of weird with all those multiple pupils in his eyes. Just great. Okay, I know I do sound harsh, but honestly, I feel this is way too much. Also, when it comes to characters that can see into the future, they usually get defeated by something or someone that they can't predict, which is why Ichigo is the perfect candidate in this case, but I really hope he doesn't pull off some bullshit. Furthermore, if he understands the ability, the said ability will become Yuha's ally. So does this mean that if Yuha understands the ability, he can use that ability himself? Well, if that's true, then yeah, Ichibei is so fucked. In fact, he gets fucked in the final page. I mean, like, he gets killed off by getting blown up. So how'd this happen? Well, at least Ichibei didn't give up that easily and tries to pull off another one of his powerful techniques called the Futen Daisatsu Ryo, or the Slaughterous Mausoleum of Non-Reincarnation, where he stole 100 knights from the Soul Society 100 years in the future while drinking some of that black from a sake cup while saying this really long incantation. What the Futen Daisatsu Ryo is supposed to do is to suck away all the black that Yuha is enveloped in, while everything in between, blood, flesh, and bones, will get crushed into a murky blackness and turned into nothing. Okay, as much as I didn't like the incantation because it was going on for too long, but I did like the artwork. Too bad all that time and effort on Ichibe's part was completely wasted because, surprise surprise, it doesn't work on Yuha, because according to him, he's the all-seeing. There is absolutely nothing that can obstruct his comprehension and countermeasuring. Everything he sees is powerless before him. So, in other words, no matter how powerful or weak the ability he faces, as long as there's nothing that can interfere with his comprehension and countermeasuring, the ability is useless. Oh my god, how the hell is Ichigo gonna beat this guy? I'm really torn about how I feel about Yuha's abilities. On the one hand, they're incredibly insane and way overpowered, but on the other hand, that makes him a very huge threat, and I like it when villains are very threatening. Anyway, the chapter overall, I didn't really hate it, but there were parts of the chapter that I didn't really like. So I'm conflicted over how I feel about it, but this chapter was definitely full of surprises. So once again we get another chapter with some good and some bad, but Kubo spoiled the plot twist in this because of the title, Death of the Soul King. But before you get to that, let's get to the bad part of the chapter. So after Ichibe gets killed and Yuha removes the seal from the Soul King's palace, we see the rest of Squad Zero, and they're all defeated off panel. This is complete bullshit. Their fights were skipped. We didn't get to see their Shikais or Bankais. We won't get to see the Elite Guard's abilities, at least not until they fight against Ichigo and the others. And we didn't get to see how they were defeated by the Elite Guards. I mean, the only ones that were living up to the name of Squad Zero was Ichibe and Imaya. Sure, we saw a bit of Korinji and Shutara and a little bit on Hikefune, but we never got to see what they can do in combat. So much expectations were on these guys ever since Squad Zero was first mentioned during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. And the one time we get to see all of them fight, it gets skipped. Thanks a freaking lot, Kubo. Well, at least the next part is actually good because Ichigo and the others have finally arrived. It's about goddamn time, but they arrived a bit too late. And then we get to this part where I really don't know how to feel about this. Now, surprisingly, Ichibe survives from the previous chapter after getting blown up, but it's not because of Orihime using Soten Kishun, which would have made a hell of a lot more sense. No, it's because he asked Ichigo to call his full name, which he was able to receive a tiny bit of his power and transform it to restore his body back in one piece, and he was able to survive. He was able to do that while being on the verge of death. Okay, I know Ichibe is all about names. I understand that. But how he was able to survive from getting blown up like that is just... well, Ichigo says it very nicely. It sounds like a load of crap. But even though his body is restored, his power hasn't been fully replenished. So it's gonna take a while for him to regain his full strength and help Ichigo and the others out. So he entrusts Ichigo to stop Yuha from killing the Soul King. Because apparently the Soul King is the linchpin of the world. If the Soul King dies, then everything in the Bleach universe, from the Serete to Hueco Mundo to the world of the living, will collapse and fade into oblivion. Which begs the question, why does Yuha want to kill the Soul King if killing the Soul King will destroy everything in the Bleach universe? Wouldn't that mean that Yuha will die as well as everyone else? I mean, we know his objective, but we don't know the reasoning behind it. Which, by the way, right after Ichibe entrusts Ichigo to protect the Soul King, within the next page the Soul King gets stabbed. Wow. They just arrived and they were just assigned this important task, and right in the next page they already failed before they got the chance to get there. Also, why didn't Ichibe tell the group about Yuha's almighty ability? It would have came in handy when they would get to Yuha. I guess he didn't have enough time left, but considering that they were too late, because seriously, next page, Soul King gets stabbed. I mean, what the hell? Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway, the chapter ends off with another surprise twist, revealing that the Soul King is Yuha's father. Now, some people did predict that the Soul King might be Yuha's father, which, okay, it might not be a surprise to some people, but that makes me even more curious about Yuha's backstory and his connection to the Soul King. I don't know if we'll get that anytime soon, but whatever happened between the two might be the reason why Yuha wants to kill the Soul King. On the plus side, at least now that Ichigo and the others have arrived, we'll finally see what they can do after during all that training once they eventually get to the Elite Guards. And hopefully we'll get to see Haschwald and Uryu do something. But one thing's for sure, in the next chapter we'll definitely get a confirmation if the Soul King really is dead. Because if he's dead, then the apocalypse has come upon the Bleach universe.